This is Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
You know what it is?
an incarcerated individual at San Quentin Rehabilitation Center, San Quentin, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
What up, Sammy?
What's going on, Dusty?
I want to know about Sammy. Let's go all the way back, man, to the beginning. Tell everybody where you grew up.
I grew up in Sacramento. I was raised, parents from the plazas. So I was raised in the plazas. And, went through some trials and tribulations when I was a kid that forced my mother and my father to split up. My mother ended up moving to Southern California in the 90s, San Bernardino, Little Africa, and kind of got herself caught up with some situation that led to her incarceration. And due to her incarceration, we ended up, jumping home to home, eventually ending up in a foster home and relocating back to Sacramento with our father when I was probably about 12 years old. So, once I get back to Sacramento at about 12 years old, it's like, I'm exposed to a lot already. I already know how to hustle. I already know how to get money. But at the same time, I'm dealing with so much untreated trauma that I didn't even realize I had at that time. Being a kid, going through the system, feeling abandoned by my parents, and just going through that cycle of, not understanding life as a 10-year-old kid,
Yeah, man. Well, let's take it slow. Talk to us about being in the system and some of the horrors of, going through that. You said you didn't, know who to trust and things like that. Talk to me about that.
Being in the system, I'm going to be honest. Like, when I first came to prison, I was, 20 years old, county jail for the first time when I was 18 years old. And I think, going to prison, I started in Pelican Bay. So, you always heard the stories about Pelican Bay, the violence, and, So you can, when I got off the bus, we don't want to admit it. And, young men going to prison, but it was a fear in me of, damn, what's going to happen to me up here? Am I going to survive this? I remember on the bus ride, as we riding up there, I was like, damn, they really sent me somewhere to die. And not in a sense of, being killed, but just in a sense of, isolation in the middle of nowhere where I know, damn, this is a place where I can move my mind and nobody will know. This is a place where I can be locked in a hole and nobody would ever know that I was gone. And that's the feeling it gave. So when I got off that bus, that's how I felt going to a yard as a kid in a sense, not knowing anybody. I didn't hop off the bus with friends. I didn't hop off the bus with homies. Hopped off the bus as an individual, walking into an environment where politics exists, racism exists, and not really having an understanding of that, of what that really meant. So even though you mask it with violence and you mask it and act like you don't give a fuck because you fight and rioting and doing all those other things, deep down inside when you lay down at night, you still do have that fear, and everything is fear-based. But you mask it because your childhood and what they taught you as a child start to register. Boys don't feel. Boys don't express emotion.
Yeah.
You feel me? Boys don't cry. And so those childhood thoughts and those childhood lessons start to surface now into my young adulthood. So now I put on this mask and put on this exterior like I'm not hurt, like I'm not sad that I don't see my family, like I'm not hurting that I abandoned my family, a little bit of family I do have, and I felt that.
Before we continue, how many years are you doing, and how many years have you already walked down?
I've been down going on 16 years. I was sentenced to 159 years to life.
Damn. We're going to get to that. Let's take it slow, man, because I want to understand the progression and, you know, how it led to you getting 150 plus years. When did the street start intriguing you? When did you jump off the porch?
Probably about 10 years old. And I'm going to be honest, I jumped off the porch on like innocent shit. And I say, excuse my language, I jumped off the porch on some innocent stuff. And I say innocent because, like, it started off just selling candy. But it was selling candy for a purpose. I remember at 10 years old, I used to have to sell candy to pay for a hotel room every single night at 10 years old.
Wow.
We wouldn't go to the foster system. So every night, I remember, like, it was two dudes in San Bernardino. They was from IE Projects named Mike and Tim. Mike and Tim was both from IE Projects, and they were brothers, and they had a homeboy named Dale. Now, Mike and Tim, they was two Damos and a Black Rag, and Dale was a Crip. But in San Bernardino, like, they all function as one. But now, so as a 10-year-old kid, these were like, they were probably about 19, 20 at the time. This was 1999.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And these were full-fledged gang members. But what they would do is they would take the local kids and go talk to their parents and their guardians, whoever had ownership of them. And they would actually tell your parents, like, look, we trying to teach these kids how to be entrepreneurs and know how to take care of themselves, because they actually knew what this environment bred. They knew it bred abandonment, foster homes. So what they were doing was they were giving us tools to survive without even knowing what they were really doing. Well, they probably did know. So that's where it started with me. It started with just selling candy. So I'm selling candy. We would go to Smart Final, you know what I mean, and buy. It started with peanut brittle, stuff like that. We selling them for $6. And then eventually it started, like, it decreased to where you can go buy the, you remember, Dusty, you about probably my age or a little older. You remember them long licorice that was like, you remember them long licorice that was like jump ropes?
I already know what you're talking about. I can taste it right now.
Yeah. So what we did was we would go to Smart Find, and you could buy a box of those. It's 30 in the box for $9.99 at the time, and we would sell each one for $2. So now I'm taking a $9.99 investment, making it $60 off of it, plus my donations. So I'm going home cheaply with $60 a night as a 10-year-old kid, but I had to pay for that hotel room every single night. So that's kind of where I jumped off the porch, and it was a necessity for me to get money. Eventually, I ended up going to the foster home anyway.